The wind cut through the Chicago streets like a blade that night, rattling windows and shaking the faint glow of street lamps. Officer Ethan Cole, a decorated veteran of the force, was usually unflappable. He had seen the worst humanity could offer: armed standoffs, gang violence, and nights where he went home smelling of gunpowder and blood. But this night, Ethan was alone in his modest apartment, and danger didn't announce itself with sirens or threats. It came quietly, insidiously, in the form of a sudden, sharp weakness that struck him in the chest while he was making dinner. Rex, his loyal German shepherd, sensed it immediately. The dog had been by Ethan's side for over 7 years, surviving high-speed chases and late-night stakeouts. He whined softly at first, circling Ethan as the officer stumbled toward the kitchen counter. Ethan tried to brush it off, gripping the countertop with shaking hands, thinking it was just fatigue, maybe stress. But the world tilted beneath him, and he fell to his knees. Rex barked sharply, his deep, guttural growl piercing the silent apartment. He pressed against Ethan's chest, nudging him, licking his face frantically. Ethan groaned, trying to reassure his partner. "It's okay, boy, it's nothing." But even as he said it, his vision blurred, his heartbeat spiking and plummeting erratically. The familiar apartment walls seemed to close in, the fluorescent lights above flickering. Something was very wrong. Ethan's phone lay on the counter, just out of reach. Rex nudged it closer with his nose, dropping it at Ethan's hand. With trembling fingers, Ethan dialed 911, barely able to form coherent words. I'm sick. Can't breathe right, need help." Within minutes, the sound of sirens cut through the night. Paramedics stormed into the apartment, finding Ethan slumped against the counter, gasping, sweat pouring down his face. Rex stood protectively in front of him, ears perked, growling at anyone who dared come too close. The paramedics tried to calm the dog, but he refused to leave Ethan's side, whining and circling with desperate intensity. At the hospital, chaos ensued. Ethan was whisked into the emergency room as monitors and machines beeped frantically. Nurses and doctors swarmed him, performing tests, checking vitals, drawing blood, scanning and probing for answers. Yet nothing added up. His heart rate was erratic. His oxygen levels fluctuated without explanation. His organs appeared to be failing, but no test pinpointed a cause. One nurse whispered to another, her voice tight with fear. "He's too young, too healthy. How can this be happening?" Rex had been allowed inside for a few moments and refused to leave. He paced the floor, occasionally pressing his muzzle against Ethan's side or pawing at his bed. The dog's behavior seemed unnatural, almost desperate. Yet, as the doctors and nurses debated diagnoses and treatments, no one could understand why the dog wouldn't calm down. Hours passed. Ethan drifted in and out of consciousness, slipping into a foggy half-world where fragments of his life flashed before him. The first time he and Rex had met at the pound, the night they chased down a notorious gang leader, the quiet mornings when he drank coffee while Rex rested his head on his lap. In this haze, fear gnawed at him, not for himself but for Rex, who he knew would never leave him, no matter what. Outside the ICU, the atmosphere was tense. Doctors exchanged worried glances, paging specialists. The hospital called in top-tier physicians from across the city and beyond, seeking any clue that could save Ethan. Among them were cardiologists who had saved lives from near-certain death, infectious disease experts who had thwarted epidemics, and neurologists who had diagnosed conditions invisible to standard scans. Yet, each new test came back inconclusive. They had hit a wall. Meanwhile, Rex's behavior grew stranger. He would not eat, would not rest, and seemed obsessed with a single corner of the room. He would lie there, ears twitching, nose pressed against the floor as if he were detecting something invisible to the human eye. Nurses and staff began to whisper about the dog who knows something we don't, half joking, half afraid. Ethan's wife, Maya, arrived late that night. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with red hair in disarray. She held his hand, pressing a trembling kiss to his forehead. "Stay with me, Ethan," she whispered. "Please stay." But Ethan could barely open his eyes. All he could focus on was Rex, who had refused to leave his side, packing relentlessly. At 3:17 a.m., the monitors on Ethan's bed began to spike violently. Heart rate erratic, blood pressure dropping. Machines screamed alarms that made the sterile walls of the ICU feel like a war zone. Doctors rushed to stabilize him, pushing drugs, starting IVs, calling for emergency intervention. Despite their frantic efforts, Ethan's condition deteriorated. Rex barked loudly, a sound that cut through the chaos with unnatural authority. The doctors froze momentarily, instinctively sensing urgency. Rex's eyes were locked on Ethan's left side, nose twitching as if detecting a threat invisible to human senses. One nurse, Lena, knelt down beside the dog. "What is it, boy?" she murmured. Rex pawed at the floor, whined again, then backed away suddenly, tail stiff. The moment passed quickly, swallowed by the medical storm, but something had shifted. That night, the ICU staff couldn't ignore the dog's behavior entirely. Some joked nervously about superdog instincts, while others felt a chill, an inexplicable awareness that Rex might be onto something no human could see. By sunrise, Ethan was barely holding on. His breaths were shallow, uneven, punctuated by occasional gasps. Machines beeped in chaotic rhythm and the doctors exchanged grim looks. They had no answers. 50 of the city's best doctors had tried everything, and still, Ethan teetered on the edge of life and death. Rex sat silently beside the bed now, head resting on Ethan's arm, eyes scanning every movement of the medical staff. When a new doctor entered the room, Rex growled, low and warning, as if to say, "You're missing something. Look closer." And in that moment, a thought struck Lena, the nurse who had first noticed Rex's obsession. She whispered under her breath, "What if he knows something we do?" The statement hung in the air like a question mark over a dark, stormy city. No one answered. No one dared suggest that a dog could know more than the combined expertise of 50 leading physicians. Yet Rex continued to stare, patient, unwavering, as if waiting for the humans to catch up. Ethan drifted again, this time deeper, teetering between unconsciousness and the edge of a nightmare. And as his world faded to darkness, one truth remained clear. His life, and the key to saving it, was not in the hands of the doctors. It was in the instincts of a dog who refused to let him go. The camera of imagination lingers on the ICU, buzzing with frantic life and whispered fears. Machines beep, doctors murmur, and Rex, the unsung sentinel, sits silently, nose twitching, eyes sharp, the only being aware of what comes next. And in that quiet moment, suspense hangs thick. Will the dog's instincts be enough to uncover what 50 of the best minds could not? By the next morning, the hospital had transformed into a war room. Word had spread fast. Ethan Cole, one of the city's most respected officers, was slipping away under mysterious circumstances. Doctors, researchers, and specialists from across the nation were on site, their names on plaques and journals commanding respect. 50 of the best, each a master of their field, had converged to solve what no one had yet understood. Cardiologists argued with infectious disease experts over the readings on monitors, while neurologists pored over scans that stubbornly refused to show any abnormality. Toxicologists, pharmacologists, and even a consultant from the CDC hovered near Ethan's bed, each armed with their own arsenal of diagnostic tools. Despite the expertise, the scene was tense, almost frenzied. Ethan's heart rate spiked and fell in unpredictable waves, sending monitors screaming alarms that cut through the hushed chatter. Nurses dashed between machines, flipping switches, adjusting dosages, recalibrating the equipment, their hands trembling despite years of experience. The room felt less like a hospital and more like a battlefield, and Ethan, unconscious and vulnerable, was caught in the middle. Rex remained immovable by the bed, muscles taut, eyes flicking between each moving figure, every door that opened or closed. The dog refused all attempts to move him. Even the specialists who had seen hundreds of critical patients paused, noticing the almost unnatural intensity in Rex's gaze. One of the attending doctors, Dr. Malcolm Hayes, a stoic cardiologist with decades of experience, finally broke the tense silence. "I've seen every kind of arrhythmia imaginable," he said, voice clipped, eyes narrowing at the monitors. "This isn't normal. This isn't anything we've seen before." Another doctor, Dr. Priya Menon, a leading neurologist, shook her head. "It's systemic. Something is attacking multiple organs, but all the scans are clean. No lesions, no blockages, nothing. It's like the body is being poisoned from the inside out." The room buzzed with uncertainty. Specialists exchanged glances, their confidence beginning to erode. They ran more tests: blood samples, MRI scans, CAT scans, toxicology screens. Every result returned inconclusive. Rex, sensing the human panic, began acting even more strangely. He paced along Ethan's bed, sniffing, whining, circling, then stopping abruptly. The dog's nose would twitch violently at Ethan's left side, then back away, as if burned by something unseen. No one could interpret the behavior, but Lena, the young nurse who had noticed it the night before, studied him closely. "Look at him," Lena whispered to Dr. Menon, voice barely audible. "He's not just anxious. He knows something's wrong right there on his left side." Dr. Menon frowned. "It's a dog. Dogs can sense illness sometimes, but—" Her voice trailed off as she watched Rex paw the floor and whine sharply. The dog's insistence seemed almost purposeful. Despite her doubt, Lena couldn't ignore the feeling creeping up her spine. The dog was trying to tell them something. Something the machines and the specialists couldn't detect. Meanwhile, Ethan hovered on the edge of consciousness, his mind flickering in and out like a broken film reel. He saw fragments of his life, memories of street chases, hostage rescues, and quiet nights with Rex curled at his feet. But something darker lingered in the haze, an unspoken fear gnawing at him. He tried to speak, but the words refused to form. He was trapped in a body that refused to obey. Hours passed. The specialists worked tirelessly, but the clock was against them. Ethan's oxygen levels dipped dangerously low, his blood pressure plummeting, and his heart rhythm became erratic beyond anything the monitors had ever recorded. The alarms in the ICU became a chorus of panic. In a desperate move, Dr. Hayes called for an emergency team meeting, gathering all 50 specialists around Ethan's bed. Charts, scans, and lab results were spread across carts, monitors, and laptops. The discussion was heated, voices overlapping. "It's a toxin," someone insisted. "Something that's invisible, synthetic, maybe an experimental drug." "No," countered another. "If it were a toxin, we would see elevated markers. Liver, kidney, enzymes, all clear. This is something else." The tension reached a boiling point. 50 of the nation's most brilliant minds argued over possibilities, while Ethan's body continued to fail. Each second that ticked by was another chance slipping through their fingers. And then Rex barked, sharp, commanding, different from the whines and growls he had made before. He leapt to his feet and lunged toward Ethan's left side, teeth barely bared but mouth open in warning. Every head in the room turned. The specialists froze, instinctively sensing the dog's urgency. Dr. Menon, heart pounding, stepped closer. "What is he seeing?" she muttered, kneeling to look at Ethan. Rex pressed his nose into the air above Ethan's left shoulder, then recoiled, whining urgently. Lena stepped forward. "I told you he knows something, look there." For a long, tense moment, the room fell silent. Machines beeped erratically, the fluorescent lights hummed, and Rex's growls filled the room, insistent, commanding attention. 50 of the best doctors in the country looked at a dog, feeling an uncomfortable, unspoken truth. The dog might know something they didn't. Dr. Hayes frowned, exhaling slowly. "Fine," he said finally. "We'll follow the dog. If there's a clue he's pointing to, we'll check it, but it better be something real." Rex barked again, louder, more urgent. He ran in a small circle, pawing at the floor, then pressed his nose sharply against the bed, hovering over Ethan's left side. Lena retrieved another portable scanner, aiming it exactly where Rex indicated. The moment the scanner lit up, a flicker appeared on the monitor, a shadow barely visible, like a whisper against the white noise of normal readings. The specialists leaned closer. "What is that?" Dr. Menon whispered, eyes widening. I don't know," Dr. Hayes admitted, voice tight. "That's not in any protocol, but it's there." Rex sat back, watching the reaction with calm intensity, as if satisfied that finally someone had noticed. The discovery was subtle, but it was something, enough to suggest a path. Whatever was affecting Ethan had been invisible, undetectable through conventional methods, yet the dog had led them directly to it. A tiny hint of hope shimmered in the storm of despair. Even so, Ethan's condition was worsening. Machines screamed alarms. The room was tense, every doctor on edge. Time was slipping away, and Ethan's body was fragile. One misstep, one wrong move, and the life of a decorated officer, someone who had faced death countless times on the streets, would be lost to something no human could see or understand. Rex's gaze never wavered. His loyalty, his intuition, and his silent insistence had become the thin line between life and death. 50 of the best doctors had failed to pinpoint the cause, and now, with the dog's guidance, they had their first lead, but it was only the beginning. And in that charged silence, one truth echoed through the ICU. Sometimes, the best human minds can see everything, and still miss what a single loyal heart can reveal. Night had fallen again over the hospital. The sterile white walls of the ICU glowed under harsh fluorescent lights, reflecting the frantic, exhausted faces of doctors and nurses who hadn't slept in hours. Ethan Cole lay pale and frail on the hospital bed, monitors beeping a chaotic rhythm that no one seemed able to tame. Despite the presence of 50 of the nation's top medical minds, the room still hummed with uncertainty, tension crackling in every corner. Rex, the loyal German shepherd, refused to leave Ethan's side. He had spent the day alerting doctors to anomalies, barking and packing when machines failed to detect the problem, circling the left side of Ethan's body where subtle signs of illness hid beneath layers of flesh and blood. But the night brought a new intensity to his vigilance. He would not rest. He would not sleep. The staff tried to coax him into a kennel, tried to distract him with treats and toys, tried reasoning with him as if he were a patient. But Rex would not be moved. Every attempt ended with him returning to Ethan, whining sharply, pressing his nose to the floor, pawing the bed frame, sometimes growling low, almost mournful. Nurses began to whisper nervously, "He knows something. He's not just acting out." Even Lena, the nurse who had first noticed Rex's peculiar instincts, felt a shiver crawl up her spine. She knelt beside the dog, brushing a hand along his thick fur. "Rex, what are you trying to tell us?" she murmured. The dog lifted his head, eyes locked on Ethan's chest, then the floor, then the monitors, before letting out a sharp, urgent bark. It was a bark that said more than instinct. It was a warning. The new shift of doctors arrived, unaware of Rex's behavior. One young resident, full of confidence and bravado, scoffed. "It's just a dog. Dogs can be emotional, but they don't detect toxins or rare illnesses." He knelt down to push Rex away gently. But the dog reacted immediately, snapping at his hands with controlled aggression, a low growl resonating deep in his chest. The man recoiled, startled, a chill running down his spine. Even the skeptics began to notice. Rex's actions weren't random. They were precise, intentional. His nose twitched as though tracing a hidden trail. His gaze flicked from monitors to Ethan's body, darting to the floor near the left shoulder. Something invisible was calling him, something that humans could neither see nor smell, or perhaps something humans had overlooked. Hours passed. Ethan remained unconscious, his body fighting an invisible enemy. The ICU lights hummed, casting a sterile glow over the chaos. Doctors debated, whispered, shouted instructions across the room, but none of them had a clue. The more they poked and prodded, the more fragile Ethan became. And all the while, Rex never wavered. At 2:13 a.m., a subtle shift occurred. Rex began packing faster, his movements sharper, more urgent. He barked, lunged toward the floor, and then stopped suddenly, stiff as a statue. His tail was rigid, his ears pinned back, his eyes narrowed. He began sniffing the air, low to the ground, his body vibrating with tension. Lena watched, heart pounding. "He's found it," she whispered to herself. "He's found it." She called Dr. Menon over. "Look, he's fixated on something near Ethan's left side. I think he smells what we're missing." Dr. Menon hesitated but leaned closer, scanning Ethan's body. Nothing obvious. No bruises, no rashes, no visible wounds. The patient looked like any other critically ill adult, yet Rex's intensity was impossible to ignore. The doctor's scientific mind fought disbelief. Could a dog truly know what we couldn't see? The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors and Rex's low growl. Then, suddenly, he barked again, sharply, almost as if commanding the staff to act. He pawed at a subtle, barely visible mark near Ethan's left shoulder, a faint puncture almost imperceptible beneath his shirt. The discovery sent a ripple of tension through the room. 50 top medical minds froze, some shocked, others skeptical, but all aware of one undeniable truth. The dog had found something they had all missed. Dr. Hayes, the lead cardiologist, stepped forward, adjusting his glasses, eyes narrowed. "That is almost invisible. How did no one notice that before?" "Because it's not supposed to matter," muttered another specialist. "It's just a tiny wound. It doesn't explain systemic organ failure." Lena shook her head. "But look at him," she said, gesturing to Rex. "He's insistent, he won't leave, he knows it's important." Rex barked again, urgency thick in every sound. The dog circled the bed, sniffing and growling, then returned to the same spot over and over. The room held its breath. Machines beeped, alarms occasionally piercing the tension, and outside the city's hum was distant, insignificant compared to the drama inside this small ICU. Dr. Menon finally nodded. "We'll do a targeted scan, exactly where Rex is pointing. Let's see if there's anything the machines missed before." The team prepared the scanner, careful and precise. Rex, sensing the shift, sat back slightly, almost ceremoniously, as though giving humans a chance to follow his lead. He remained still, eyes fixed on the screen as the scanner passed over Ethan's left side. Then a flicker appeared, a small anomaly barely detectable, a shadow in the tissue that no previous scan had revealed. The room went silent. "What is that?" whispered one doctor, voice tight with tension. "It's a foreign object," Dr. Menon said slowly. "Something microscopic like a dart or injection, but it's too small to appear on standard imaging. Yet it's there, and it's likely the source of his condition." The revelation caused a mixture of awe and fear. Ethan's body had been battling a toxin no human mind had detected. 50 of the nation's top doctors had tried everything. And yet it had taken a dog, intuitive, loyal, and relentless, to reveal the first clue in a life-threatening mystery. Rex barked again, low and commanding, as if to say, "See, I told you, now act." The urgency of the moment was palpable. Ethan's vitals were deteriorating rapidly. Blood pressure plummeting, oxygen levels dipping, and his heart rate erratic. Every second counted. The anomaly found by Rex could hold the key to saving him, but they had only minutes to act. Dr. Hayes grabbed the team, issuing rapid-fire instructions. "We need to trace the toxin, stabilize his organs, and neutralize whatever's in his system. Move." The specialists sprang into action, coordinating like a symphony of urgency. IVs were adjusted, antidotes prepared, scanners focused. All the while, Rex stayed rigidly by Ethan's side, alert and unflinching, a silent sentinel refusing to break, a reminder of the line between life and death. Hours felt like minutes, and minutes stretched like hours. Ethan's life hung in a delicate balance, and the tension in the room was suffocating. Nurses whispered prayers, doctors muttered calculations, and Rex, patient and unwavering, refused to give up. And yet, despite all the expertise, the tension, and the frantic energy, one truth loomed larger than any human calculation. Ethan's life had been nearly lost before they even knew what to look for, and only a dog's intuition had uncovered the first real clue. As the night dragged on, the staff worked tirelessly, guided by the instincts of the dog who refused to rest. Every beep of the monitor, every flash on the scanner, every subtle reaction of Rex added urgency and weight to their decisions. And in that tense, high-stakes environment, one question hovered over them all. Would the clue Rex had found be enough to save Ethan before it was too late? The dog's gaze never wavered, and for the first time the doctors realized something profound. It wasn't just loyalty. They were witnessing an intelligence, an intuition honed through years of partnership, capable of detecting what 50 human minds could not. And as Ethan teetered between consciousness and the abyss, Rex refused to leave, waiting, watching, ready to guide the humans through the unseen danger that threatened to end a life that had faced death countless times before. The room held its breath. The next few hours would determine if loyalty, instinct, and intuition could succeed where science had failed. By the early hours of dawn, the ICU had transformed into a hive of tense activity. Doctors and nurses moved like choreographed chaos around Ethan's bed, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. The beeping monitors, intravenous drips, and hiss of oxygen machines created a frantic symphony, punctuated by occasional shouted instructions. 50 of the nation's best doctors had now been working for nearly 24 hours straight, yet Ethan's condition showed no sign of improvement. And yet one observer remained unshakable, Rex. The German shepherd refused to leave Ethan's side. His eyes, wide and unblinking, followed every movement. Every time a nurse adjusted the IV or a doctor tapped on a monitor, Rex's gaze sharpened, his growl low but insistent. It was as if he knew something crucial, something invisible, and he was quietly demanding that humans finally see it. Lena, the nurse who had first recognized the dog's strange behavior, stayed at Ethan's side like a shadow. She brushed a hand along Rex's back, whispering, "We're watching, buddy. Lead the way." Rex barked sharply, then pivoted, circling Ethan's bed and returning repeatedly to the same spot near his left shoulder. His movements were precise, almost ritualistic, unlike anything a dog would normally do. He sniffed, pawed the bed, and then sat back, eyes locking with Lena. Something in the room changed. Dr. Priya Menon, leading the neurological team, knelt beside Rex. "We've scanned everywhere," she murmured, her voice tight with frustration. "There's nothing we can detect." But Rex was insistent. He barked again, louder this time, then sniffed Ethan's shirt, pulling gently at the fabric near the barely visible puncture wound they had noticed the night before. Dr. Hayes, the cardiologist, frowned. "We've already done a full toxicology screen. There's nothing in his blood that explains multi-organ failure. Nothing. And we've checked for every common and even uncommon toxin in the literature." "That doesn't mean we've checked for everything," Lena said quietly, almost to herself, eyes never leaving the dog. "Rex wouldn't be this obsessive if he wasn't sensing something." The lead toxicologist, Dr. Simmons, finally leaned over Ethan, scanning the faint puncture mark. "It's microscopic," he muttered. "Probably a modified delivery system, small enough to bypass standard detection methods. Could be nanotechnology, some rare synthetic compound we wouldn't normally screen for." Rex barked again, almost urgently, then nudged Lena toward the monitor that displayed Ethan's scans. He pressed his nose against the corner of the screen, growling low. Dr. Menon followed the dog's gesture, squinting at the flickering images. "Wait, there's something here." She adjusted the scanner to enhance the faint shadow Rex had been fixated on. A subtle, nearly invisible anomaly appeared, a minute trail of a foreign substance infiltrating tissue near Ethan's left shoulder and extending subtly into his bloodstream. Dr. Hayes's face drained of color. "That's it," he breathed. "It's spreading too slowly to show on standard scans. That's why no one could see it. We missed it, all of us." The room fell into tense silence. Machines beeped in time with Ethan's weakening heart. The gravity of the situation settled like a weight on everyone's shoulders. 50 of the nation's best doctors had failed to detect the source, but a dog's instincts had led them to the clue that might save a life. Rex, sensing recognition, let out a low, almost triumphant bark, then backed away slightly, as if satisfied that humans had finally followed his lead. Dr. Simmons sprang into action. "We need a precise chemical assay on the substance immediately. We need to identify it before it overwhelms his organs. If we delay, he won't survive." Every second mattered. Ethan's skin had begun to pale, his lips tinged with blue. The monitors beeped unevenly, sometimes alarming, sometimes silent, reflecting the unpredictable deterioration of his condition. Nurses adjusted oxygen masks, checked IV lines, and read vitals with tense precision. Lena knelt beside Rex again, whispering, "You found it, boy. Now help them fix it." Rex nudged Ethan's arm lightly, then pawed near the puncture site again. It was as if he was insisting, "This is where it started. This is what's poisoning him." The chemical team raced to prepare the assays, carefully isolating the sample Rex had effectively pointed out. They worked with meticulous precision, pipetting, centrifuging, analyzing every trace of the mysterious compound. The result was chilling. "It's a rare synthetic toxin," Dr. Simmons said, voice grim. "Extremely slow-acting, nearly invisible to standard tests, highly potent in minuscule doses. Whoever administered it knew exactly what they were doing, and it's already spreading through his system." A murmur ran through the room. Ethan's family, waiting in a separate area, clutched each other, unaware that the invisible threat was finally becoming visible, but that time was running out. Dr. Hayes's jaw tightened. "We need an antidote, immediately. Can we synthesize something fast enough?" Dr. Simmons shook his head. "There isn't a known antidote, but if we act quickly, we can stabilize him, block further spread, and buy time for an experimental treatment. It's risky, but it's our only chance." Rex, sensing the urgency, growled low and placed his head gently against Ethan's shoulder, as if lending strength, urging the humans to move faster. The team launched into action. IV lines were adjusted to deliver high-dose stabilizers. Medications were prepared with extreme care. Every second was a battle against an invisible enemy. Every decision could mean the difference between life and death. Amid the flurry, Dr. Menon paused, studying the pattern of the toxin's spread. "Look at this," she said. "It's entering through the puncture wound and bypassing conventional filtration in the bloodstream. This isn't random. Someone designed it to evade detection. Someone wanted him dead, quietly." A shiver passed through the room. The implication was clear. Ethan hadn't collapsed by chance. He had been targeted, and 50 of the best medical minds, armed with cutting-edge technology, had come within hours of losing him, because the danger had been too small, too precise, too invisible for conventional methods. Rex barked again, sharply. The sound cut through the tension, almost commanding attention. The dog's instinct had revealed what human expertise could not: the toxin, its entry point, and the urgency required to stop it. Dr. Hayes clenched his fists. "We act now," he said, voice steady but tense. "We block the spread, stabilize his organs, and buy time. We save him." The team moved with synchronized urgency. Every adjustment, every calculation, every administered dose was informed by the clue Rex had revealed. It was as if the dog's instincts had become the compass guiding human hands through an invisible labyrinth of death. Minutes stretched, heavy and tense. Ethan's vitals responded slowly. There were moments when monitors flatlined briefly, then returned to life. Nurses and doctors held their breaths with each flicker. The room was a battleground, every movement critical, every second weighted with the possibility of loss. And all the while, Rex remained at Ethan's side, unmoving, vigilant, a silent sentinel ensuring that the humans did not falter. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ethan's vitals began to stabilize. The immediate threat of systemic collapse receded. The room exhaled collectively, but no one smiled. Relief was tempered by exhaustion, fear, and the stark realization. This had almost been too late. Rex pressed his head gently against Ethan's arm, letting out a soft whine that was almost a sigh. He had found the invisible enemy. He had revealed the missed detail. And for the first time, the humans recognized that without him, Ethan would almost certainly have died. Dr. Hayes, standing back, finally allowed himself to meet the dog's gaze. "We owe you, boy," he said quietly. "You just saved a life we couldn't even understand." And in that moment, the ICU was filled with an unspoken truth. Loyalty, intuition, and instinct had done what human intellect alone could not. Rex's unwavering vigilance had uncovered the detail that would save Ethan, and possibly uncover the dark design that had almost taken him. Yet even as Ethan stabilized, the shadow of danger remained. Whoever had targeted him was still out there, and the question lingered, unspoken but clear: who had done this, and why? Rex, head resting lightly on Ethan's shoulder, seemed to sense it too. His gaze was distant, thoughtful, and unyielding, as if warning that the battle was far from over. And in the quiet aftermath of discovery, one thing was certain. The dog who refused to rest had found what 50 of the best doctors had missed, and the fight for survival was only just beginning. The first light of dawn seeped through the ICU windows, casting a pale, almost eerie glow over the room. Ethan Cole lay motionless on the bed, fragile and pale, his body a battleground for a toxin so precise and lethal it had evaded 50 of the nation's top doctors. Yet for the first time, thanks to Rex's unwavering instincts, there was a path forward, a way to stabilize him and possibly save his life. But the race had only begun. Every second that ticked by brought the toxin closer to destroying vital organs. Every shallow breath Ethan took threatened to betray the fragile balance the medical team had fought to achieve. Dr. Simmons, the toxicologist who had finally identified the rare synthetic compound, worked feverishly alongside a team of specialists. "We have a partial antidote," he explained, voice tight with urgency. "It's experimental. It hasn't been fully tested in humans. If it works, it will neutralize the toxin and stabilize his organs. But there's a very narrow window. Minutes will make the difference between life and death." Dr. Hayes, his hands trembling, looked down at Ethan. "Do it. Whatever it takes, do it now." Rex, sensing the critical moment, pressed his massive head against Ethan's arm. His eyes met Lena's for a brief second, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. It was almost as if the dog were silently commanding her, "Watch him. Guide them. He's counting on us." The team moved with a precise urgency. Every nurse, every doctor, every technician became part of a single, focused machine. The experimental antidote was administered intravenously, a cocktail of chemicals designed to bind with the toxin, neutralizing it before it could further ravage Ethan's system. As the first doses entered his veins, monitors began to react violently. Blood pressure fluctuated wildly. Heart rate soared, then plummeted. The machine screamed alarms in protest, filling the room with a cacophony of warnings. Each doctor moved frantically, adjusting dosages, recalibrating machines, administering supportive medications. Rex paced anxiously, ears pinned, tail stiff. He barked sharply every time a nurse hesitated, every time a machine beeped irregularly. It was clear he understood the gravity of the situation. No one could take their eyes off him. Minutes felt like hours. Ethan's chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven waves. The antidote was working, but only marginally. His heart skipped beats, flatlined briefly, then kicked back into rhythm. His skin flushed with the effort of his organs fighting for life. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He was at the brink, caught between death and survival. Lena held Rex's collar tightly, whispering soothing words while keeping her eyes on Ethan. "We're with you," she murmured. "You can fight this. Just hang on." Dr. Menon, kneeling beside the bed, scanned the monitors again. "The antidote is beginning to bind," she said, voice trembling slightly. "We're seeing stabilization, but it's slow, too slow. We need to support his organs until it takes full effect." Cardiologists, pulmonologists, and ICU specialists sprang into action, administering additional medications, adjusting ventilators, and stabilizing Ethan's heart rhythm. Each action was informed by the subtle clues Rex had helped uncover: the precise location of the toxin's entry, the spread pattern in the bloodstream, and the tiny puncture wound that had been invisible to conventional detection. Hours of tense, methodical work followed. Ethan's body fluctuated dangerously, teetering on the edge. Every nurse and doctor in the room felt the weight of mortality pressing down. Even with their expertise, even with the experimental antidote, the outcome was uncertain. One misstep, one slight delay, and Ethan would be lost. Meanwhile, outside the ICU, Maya, Ethan's wife, sat in silent terror. She had been informed of the toxin, the rare synthetic compound, and the experimental treatment, but words could not convey the depth of fear clawing at her chest. She clutched a small, worn photograph of Ethan and Rex from years ago when they had first met. "Come back to me," she whispered, tears streaking her face. "Please come back." Inside the ICU, Rex's instincts were flawless. He nudged Ethan whenever he detected slight changes in breathing, barked at unusual monitor fluctuations, and even guided nurses to check lines and IVs that might have been overlooked. Each time, the staff followed him without hesitation, realizing that their canine partner's intuition had become indispensable. The clock was merciless. Each minute brought Ethan closer to organ failure, closer to the abyss that had claimed countless patients before him. Sweat soaked the brows of the medical team. Hands shook as they pushed drugs, adjusted machines, and monitored vitals. Fear coiled in the air, thick and suffocating. At 7:02 a.m., the first glimmer of hope appeared. Ethan's heart rhythm began to stabilize consistently. Blood pressure leveled out, and oxygen levels started to rise gradually. The antidote, in combination with precise supportive care, was finally taking effect. Rex, sensing the improvement, let out a low, relieved whine. He rested his massive head gently on Ethan's chest, closing his eyes for the first time in hours. It was a momentary pause, a quiet acknowledgement that the immediate danger had passed, but the dog remained vigilant, fully aware that the battle wasn't entirely over. Dr. Hayes exhaled, rubbing his eyes. "He's responding," he said, voice hoarse. "The antidote is working. If we maintain this, he'll survive." Nurses and doctors exchanged exhausted, incredulous glances. 50 of the nation's best had been stumped by the toxin, yet a dog had led them to the crucial clue, guiding their hands and decisions. They realized, collectively and silently, that without Rex, Ethan would almost certainly have died. Ethan's body remained weak, his face pale, but life had returned to his veins. Every rise and fall of his chest was a victory. Every stable heartbeat was a triumph against an enemy that had been invisible, almost undetectable. Maya was allowed into the room briefly. She approached Ethan's bedside, tears streaming freely. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, pressing a trembling hand against his. "You have to come back to me." Ethan's eyelids fluttered, a faint groan escaping his lips. He reached out weakly, instinctively toward the familiar presence beside him. His fingers brushed Rex's fur. The dog nuzzled his hand gently, tail thumping softly against the floor. It was a silent conversation between partners, years of loyalty and trust condensed into a single, intimate moment. Dr. Menon, watching the scene, shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe it," she muttered. "This dog, he saved him." Rex barked softly, almost as if acknowledging her words. He had fulfilled his duty, guiding the humans, protecting his partner, and ensuring that life prevailed against the invisible enemy. But even as the immediate danger passed, the room was heavy with unspoken questions. Who had administered the toxin? How had they engineered something so insidious? And most importantly, would they strike again? For Ethan, the battle for survival had been won, for now. His body had responded to the antidote, organs were stabilizing, and vital signs were returning to a semblance of normalcy. But the war had only just begun. Rex, ever vigilant, refused to leave Ethan's side. He sat with perfect stillness, watching, sensing, waiting. He had proven his instinct, loyalty, and intelligence. He had done what 50 doctors could not. And as the humans cleaned up their equipment and checked vitals, one truth was undeniable. Ethan's life had been saved not by science alone, but by the unwavering dedication of a dog who refused to rest. And yet, the shadow of danger remained. Whoever had targeted Ethan with a synthetic toxin had done so with precision, foresight, and malice. The question lingered in the minds of all who had witnessed the rescue. Who had done this? And why had they thought they could succeed where 50 of the best would fail? Rex, lying at Ethan's side, seemed to sense the answer was still out there, waiting to reveal itself. The dog's eyes were sharp, unyielding, a silent reminder that the battle for justice was far from over. And in that quiet, tenuous moment of victory, one thing was certain. Survival had come down to instinct, loyalty, and timing. And the race against death had been won by the dog no one could have predicted. The sun had barely risen, but the ICU was already alive with the stark, relentless rhythm of machines, monitors, and human urgency. Ethan Cole lay motionless, his body pale and weak, yet alive, a fragile miracle guided into existence by the instincts of a dog that had refused to leave his side. Every breath he drew was shallow, uneven, and accompanied by the persistent alarms of monitors that seemed to echo the tension suffusing the room. Rex, the German shepherd who had been Ethan's silent sentinel throughout the crisis, sat rigidly at the edge of the bed. His ears twitched with every sound, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air. The dog's presence was magnetic, drawing the attention of every medical professional in the room. Even with Ethan stabilized, everyone knew the battle was not fully over. Dr. Hayes, rubbing the exhaustion from his eyes, leaned closer to Ethan. "He's stable," he whispered to the team, "but barely. We need to monitor him constantly. Any sudden change could tip him back into crisis." The morning had been a whirlwind of interventions, experimental antidotes, organ support, IV adjustments, and careful monitoring. Nurses moved like shadows, checking vitals, measuring responses, recording data. But even amidst the orchestrated precision, tension crackled like electricity in the air. They had stabilized Ethan, yes, but the fragility of human life was a reality none of them could ignore. Then it happened. One of the monitors beeped a sharp, urgent tone that cut through the tense calm. Ethan's heart flatlined. The rhythm on the screen dropped to a steady, silent line. Every second stretched into eternity. Time seemed to slow, the room's frenetic energy grinding to a terrifying halt. "No," Lena shouted, her voice cracking with raw fear. She leaned over Ethan's chest instinctively, heart pounding. "Stay with me, Ethan, come on." Rex barked, a sharp, commanding sound that seemed to pierce the chaos. He pressed his massive body against Ethan's side, pawing frantically at the bed, growling low. His eyes, wide and alert, locked on the monitors as if urging the humans to act, to save his partner. Dr. Menon snapped into action. "Begin CPR, chest compressions now." The team moved in sync, every hand guided by precision, every breath and push measured against the fragile barrier between life and death. Nurses counted compressions aloud, voices tense, sharp, rhythmic. "Administer epinephrine. Get the paddles ready," Dr. Hayes commanded. Machines whirred, alarms blared, and the fluorescent lights flickered slightly, reflecting the chaos in the eyes of every human in the room. They worked furiously, each second feeling like a lifetime. Ethan's chest rose and fell under the relentless pressure of CPR, but his heart refused to respond. And then Rex did something extraordinary. He leapt forward, placing his head directly over Ethan's chest, almost as if lending his own strength to the fragile human heart. The dog's growl resonated through the room, a deep, almost primal sound that seemed to synchronize with the frantic rhythm of compressions. Nurses hesitated, unsure of what to do, but Lena whispered, "Let him help, he knows." Minutes stretched endlessly. Sweat poured down the brows of every medical professional in the room. Arms ached, hands shook, and hearts pounded with a fear that refused to relent. Every push of CPR felt simultaneously hopeless and vital. Rex barked again, louder, a sound so urgent it shook the air. He nudged Ethan's hand weakly, pawed at his chest, and then pressed his nose firmly against him. It was as if he were saying, "I will not let you go. Not now. Not ever." Then, just when despair threatened to engulf the room, a flicker appeared on the monitor. A heartbeat, weak, irregular, but unmistakable. "Pulse, we have a pulse," Dr. Hayes shouted, relief and disbelief mingling in his voice. Rex barked triumphantly, tail wagging, head low against Ethan's chest as if to stabilize him further. The team continued compressions, gently now as the pulse strengthened, growing steadier, more consistent. Ethan coughed weakly, eyes fluttering open, and for a moment confusion and fear crossed his face. Maya, who had been waiting outside, was rushed in. She threw herself beside the bed, clutching Ethan's hand, tears streaming down her face. "You're alive! You're alive!" she cried, pressing a kiss to his forehead. Ethan's eyes, barely open, found Rex first. His hand trembled as he reached for the dog. Rex nudged him gently, tail thumping against the bed. A soft whine escaped him, a mixture of relief and reassurance. The ICU team exhaled collectively. Machines beeped more steadily, vitals stabilized, and the immediate danger had passed. But the weight of the near-death experience hung heavily in the room. Every person there understood the stark reality. Ethan had been on the precipice of death, and only the combination of instinct, loyalty, and human expertise had saved him. Dr. Menon knelt beside Ethan, voice soft but firm. "You're lucky," she said. "Many would not have survived this, but you made it thanks to him." She gestured toward Rex, who lay protectively by Ethan's side, ears twitching, eyes watchful. Ethan's lips curved faintly in a weak, grateful smile. I couldn't have done it without him," he murmured, voice hoarse. He looked down at Rex, and in that gaze, years of partnership, loyalty, and trust were unspoken yet perfectly understood. Lena, watching the interaction, felt a shiver of awe. "He did more than find the toxin," she whispered. "He saved a life, and he stayed with him every second." Even the doctors, exhausted beyond comprehension, nodded in silent agreement. 50 of the best medical minds had been outpaced by the intuition of a dog who refused to rest, who had sensed the invisible enemy and guided them to the solution in time. But the crisis had left its mark. Ethan's body was weak, fragile, and vulnerable. The toxin had caused lasting strain on his organs, and recovery would be slow and painstaking. And beyond the immediate medical drama, a darker truth remained. Someone had targeted him. Someone had nearly ended his life with a precision toxin. Rex, as if sensing the lingering danger, refused to leave Ethan's side. He nudged him gently, growled softly at the slightest movement of strangers, and maintained a vigilance that no human could match. It was a reminder that the fight was not entirely over. Maya pressed close to Ethan, whispering, "You're alive, thanks to him." Ethan nodded weakly, hand brushing Rex's fur. The dog responded with a soft nuzzle, tail thumping, eyes shining with the quiet pride of a hero unsung. Dr. Hayes finally allowed himself a rare, deep exhale. "He's alive," he said, almost to himself, "and it's all because of that dog." Yet, even in the relief, the question loomed large. Who had administered the toxin, And why had they believed 50 of the nation's best doctors wouldn't be able to save him? The answer would not come easily, and it would mark the beginning of a battle far beyond the walls of the ICU. For now, though the immediate danger had passed, Ethan had survived. Machines beeped in steady rhythm. Nurses cleaned equipment, monitored vitals, and documented every moment. And through it all, Rex remained by Ethan's side, the silent guardian, the unsung hero who had refused to rest, who had refused to surrender, and who had guided humans to save a life they could have lost forever. And as Ethan drifted back into a fragile sleep, one truth resonated in the quiet, still ICU. Sometimes life hinges not on human expertise, but on the loyalty, instinct, and courage of those who love without question. Rex rested his massive head on Ethan's chest, eyes half closed, listening to the steady heartbeat that had returned. For now, victory belonged to the dog, but the story was far from over. Somewhere beyond the hospital, the invisible threat still lingered, and Rex, ever vigilant, seemed to sense that the battle for survival and justice was only just beginning. And in that quiet, taut moment, suspense lingered. The enemy was still out there, the danger unresolved, and the loyal dog remained the one force capable of seeing what no human could. By the time Ethan Cole fully regained consciousness, the ICU had begun to resemble a calm after a storm. Machines beeped steadily, vitals were stable, and the chaos of life-or-death decisions had given way to the quiet hum of recovery. Yet beneath the fragile calm, the air was charged with questions. Who had targeted Ethan? Why had someone unleashed a rare synthetic toxin with the precision to nearly end his life? Ethan's eyes fluttered open. The first thing he saw was Rex, lying faithfully beside him. The dog's massive head rested on the bed rail, ears alert, eyes glinting with intelligence and concern. Ethan's hand moved instinctively to stroke Rex's fur. "You saved me," he whispered, voice raw from days of weakness. Rex nudged him gently, tail thumping softly, a wordless acknowledgement of loyalty fulfilled. Maya, sitting close, pressed a hand to Ethan's forehead. "You're awake," she said, voice trembling, tears streaked her cheeks. "You scared me, you had us all scared." Ethan tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Memories of the toxin, the near-death, and Rex's constant presence flooded him. "It was the doctors," he whispered, gripping Maya's hand. He saved me." He nodded toward Rex. Maya reached down to pet Rex, who wagged his tail once, deliberately, as if saying, "Yes, I did." But while the emotional reunion unfolded, Dr. Hayes and Dr. Menon were already digging into the next phase of the crisis, the investigation. Whoever had administered the toxin had done so with calculated precision. Ethan had been targeted, but why and by whom? Dr. Menon's phone buzzed with messages from colleagues across the country. Information about rare toxins, potential criminal links, and chemical synthesis methods flooded in. She shared it with Dr. Hayes. "This isn't random," she said grimly. "This compound is synthetic, engineered to avoid detection. Whoever did this has access to sophisticated labs and knew exactly what they were doing." Ethan's mind, though weak, began to piece together fragments of memory. He remembered a sting operation months earlier, a dangerous undercover assignment that had gone wrong, and a lead who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Someone had been watching. Someone had held a grudge. Meanwhile, Rex refused to leave Ethan's side. The dog would follow him to the small attached restroom, sit quietly in the corner while Ethan used the bedpan, and even nudged staff away when they approached too closely. There was an understanding. Rex knew the threat had not disappeared, only been temporarily delayed. Investigators were called in. Federal agents entered the hospital quietly, recognizing the severity of the case. They took statements from doctors, nurses, and hospital staff, but their eyes inevitably fell on Rex, who sat calmly, head high, ears alert. The dog had done more than alert humans to the toxin. He had preserved the evidence in the precise location of the puncture, in the timing of Ethan's collapse, in the instincts that guided humans to act in time. Agents examined Ethan's files, cross-referencing his recent cases. A pattern emerged. The toxin matched methods used by a shadowy criminal organization known for silencing witnesses in ways that left little trace. They had previously eluded law enforcement, but their reach was clear. Ethan's undercover work had put him squarely in the crosshairs. "Ethan," one agent began cautiously, "we believe this was deliberate. Someone wanted you dead. This toxin was targeted." Ethan nodded weakly. "I suspected as much," he admitted. "Months ago there was a lead who disappeared. I never knew if it was connected, but now it makes sense." Rex growled softly, as if affirming the danger was still present. The investigation moved quickly. Using the evidence recovered from the toxin, combined with Ethan's files and street intelligence, the agents began to identify suspects. Phone records, surveillance footage, and chemical lab traces pointed toward a network of criminals involved in drug trafficking and witness intimidation. The organization had developed the toxin to eliminate threats quietly, a weapon designed to evade even the most skilled medical intervention. Meanwhile, Ethan's recovery continued slowly. The experimental antidote had stabilized him, but doctors cautioned that his organs were still fragile. He leaned on Rex constantly, drawing comfort from the dog's presence, strength, and unwavering loyalty. Every movement, every step toward recovery was guided by the dog who had saved his life. Finally, after painstaking investigation, the truth began to crystallize. The lead agent presented the findings to Ethan and Maya. "We've identified the person who administered the toxin," the agent said. "They're part of a criminal organization that operates across multiple states. Your name was marked for elimination because of your undercover work. They assumed that even 50 of the best doctors wouldn't be able to save you. They underestimated Rex." Ethan's fists clenched as he absorbed the revelation. "They thought I was just a man," he said quietly. "They didn't count on him." He gestured toward Rex, who sat loyally, ears alert, eyes watching every movement. The agents coordinated with law enforcement to begin arrests. The network's key operatives were apprehended, evidence seized, and a trail of crimes exposed. The toxin, designed to be invisible and lethal, became the key to unraveling the criminal organization. For Ethan, the process of justice was both relief and exhaustion. He had survived death, uncovered a plot, and now saw the culprits brought to account. Yet through it all, he never let go of the presence that had guided him, Rex. The hospital recognized the dog's heroism. An official commendation was prepared. News outlets, initially focused on the miraculous survival of the officer, quickly learned of the dog's role. Headlines shifted. "Officer saved by loyal dog after targeted poisoning. Man's best friend outperforms nation's top doctors." Ethan smiled weakly at the attention but knew the truth. Rex had not acted for recognition. He had acted because loyalty demanded it, because instinct compelled him to protect his partner. Finally, when the arrests were complete and Ethan was cleared for limited mobility, he returned home. Rex walked beside him, tail high, paws steady on the sidewalk as if leading him back from the edge of death. Maya held his arm, tears in her eyes, grateful for both the man and the dog who had returned to her. In the quiet of the living room, Ethan knelt beside Rex, brushing his hand along the dog's head. "You saved me," he whispered again. "Not the doctors, not the antidote, you. You saw what no one else could. You saved my life." Rex leaned into him, resting his head against Ethan's shoulder. In that moment, a bond stronger than any words existed, silent, unshakable, and eternal. Though the criminal organization had been exposed and arrests made, Ethan knew the world remained dangerous. He could not ignore the shadow of those who had tried to take him, nor the possibility of future threats. But one thing was indisputable. Rex had proven that loyalty, instinct, and courage could succeed where intellect and technology alone might fail. As he sat there, hand on Rex's fur, Ethan made a quiet vow. He would continue to fight for justice, but he would never forget the dog who had saved him when 50 of the best had failed. The story spread across the nation. People marveled at the partnership, the heroism, and the incredible bond that had saved a life. Rex became a symbol of loyalty, intuition, and the extraordinary ways in which love could manifest. And though Ethan recovered slowly, every day brought reminders. The toxin's threat was gone, the criminals were behind bars, but the memory of those hours, of life hanging by a thread, of the dog who refused to leave, remained etched into his mind and heart forever. Rex lay at his feet, ever vigilant. The silent hero, the partner, the one who had seen what no human could. And as Ethan finally drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep that night, one truth resonated in the quiet. Sometimes the greatest heroes do not wear uniforms. Sometimes they have 4 legs, a wet nose, and a heart loyal enough to save a life that no human could. Months had passed since Ethan Cole's near-death ordeal. The toxin, the experimental antidote, and the frantic hours in the ICU had become memories etched into his bones, a reminder of the razor-thin line between life and death. Yet while Ethan's body had healed, his mind carried the weight of the experience, haunted by the knowledge that someone had tried to end his life with calculated precision. But the shadow of fear was tempered by the unwavering presence at his side, Rex. The German Shepherd, once a silent sentinel in the sterile chaos of the ICU, had become more than a companion. He had become a symbol, a hero whose loyalty and instincts had saved a human life when science and technology had failed. Ethan was finally able to return to work, not on the front lines of the streets, but in a capacity that allowed him to mentor new officers, sharing both tactical knowledge and the lessons of resilience and vigilance. And everywhere he went, Rex accompanied him, alert, attentive, the quiet embodiment of courage. The city, still abuzz from the revelation of the toxin attack, recognized both the human and canine heroism. The hospital had recommended Rex for an official commendation, a rare and unprecedented honor. Headlines across the nation celebrated the dog whose instincts had outpaced 50 of the country's best doctors. Officer saved by dog, the hero who defied death, loyalty above all, how a dog found what science could not. Despite the acclaim, Ethan and Rex remained humble. For them, it had never been about recognition. It had been about survival, trust, and the bond between man and dog. The ceremony was held in a sunlit auditorium at the city's police department. Officers, medical professionals, and families gathered, the room buzzing with anticipation. A stage had been set, flags draped solemnly behind podiums, and a spotlight waiting for the moment when Ethan would speak. Ethan stepped forward, supported lightly by Rex, who walked beside him with measured pride. Cameras flashed, capturing the extraordinary scene, a man who had faced death and the dog whose instincts had become the lifeline between life and oblivion. He cleared his throat, voice strong despite lingering weakness. I stand here today alive because of loyalty, courage, and instinct. 50 of the best doctors in the nation tried to save me, and they worked tirelessly, but it wasn't enough. Not until Rex stepped in. A hush fell over the room as Ethan paused, his hand brushing along Rex's fur. The dog sat perfectly still, ears alert, tail resting lightly on the floor. Rex saved my life, Ethan continued, emotion cracking through his voice. He found what no machine, no test, no human could detect. He guided the doctors. He protected me. And he refused to leave my side when I needed him most. He is more than a dog, he is a hero. And he reminds us all that sometimes the most extraordinary courage comes in forms we never expect. The audience erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. The mayor stepped forward, placing a medal around Rex's massive neck, a medal engraved with the words, "For loyalty, bravery, and saving a life." Rex barked softly, tail wagging, nudging Ethan gently as if sharing the moment. The dog's calm demeanor belied the intensity of the journey they had survived together. Cameras captured the metal gleaming in the sunlight, the eyes of man and dog locked in mutual understanding, a bond stronger than words could express. After the ceremony, Ethan knelt beside Rex, voice quiet now. "You saved my life, buddy, and you'll always be my partner, no matter what comes next." Rex rested his head on Ethan's shoulder, eyes gleaming with the trust and love that had carried them through the darkest hours. Yet even in triumph, the shadow of the past lingered. The criminal organization responsible for the toxin had been dismantled, its operatives behind bars, but the fear that someone else might attempt a similar attack was never far from Ethan's mind. He had learned that vigilance was never optional, that danger could arrive in forms invisible to human senses, and that Rex's instincts were invaluable in guarding against it. Over the following weeks, Ethan resumed his work with renewed purpose. He trained officers to recognize signs of subtle danger, to trust intuition, and to never underestimate the bonds between humans and animals. Rex, always by his side, became a fixture in the training academy, demonstrating loyalty, precision, and the unspoken wisdom that had saved a life. Children visiting the academy were captivated by the dog who had outsmarted death itself. Veterans nodded in respect, acknowledging the rare intelligence and courage displayed by an animal. And every night, as Ethan and Rex returned home, the quiet of their shared living room was filled with a sense of victory tempered by the solemn recognition of what had been survived. But the final twist of their story was yet to come. One evening, as Ethan reviewed case files, Rex suddenly rose, ears pricked, gaze fixed intently on a shadow outside the window. Ethan's heart skipped. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized months ago, Rex's vigilance never waned. The dog's instincts had proven infallible before, and Ethan trusted them implicitly. The next morning, law enforcement received a tip that a hidden lab producing similar toxins had been discovered. Rex had sensed a subtle trace, a lingering residue near the edge of their property, something human eyes would have ignored. Without hesitation, Ethan and the team moved to secure the site. The discovery prevented another potential attack, validating Rex's unwavering attention and instinctive intelligence. In that moment, Ethan realized something profound. Rex had not only saved his life, but had become a guardian of countless others. The partnership between man and dog was no longer just personal, it had broader significance, a living testament to loyalty, courage, and the quiet, persistent vigilance that could make all the difference between life and death. The story of Ethan and Rex became legend. Social media posts, news articles, and documentaries celebrated their bond. People were inspired, moved to tears, and reminded of the extraordinary potential for heroism in unexpected forms. Yet, despite all the attention, the man and the dog remained unchanged. For them, recognition was secondary. Survival, trust, and the enduring bond they shared mattered above all else. One quiet evening, months after the public recognition, and after the last vestiges of danger had been addressed, Ethan sat on the porch of his home. Rex lay at his feet, head resting on Ethan's boots, eyes half closed but still vigilant. The city skyline glowed in the distance, the world continuing its rhythm, unaware of the life-and-death drama that had unfolded in the shadow of its streets. Ethan gently stroked Rex's fur, voice low and sincere. "We did it, boy. You saved me. You saved countless others. You're not just my partner, you're my hero." Rex nudged him softly, tail thumping, as if to affirm the unspoken promise. Loyalty, courage, and vigilance would never waver. And as the night settled over the city, one final truth resonated, etched in the hearts of all who knew the story. The greatest hero is not always the one in uniform, not always the one with medals or accolades. Sometimes, the hero is a loyal heart, a sharp mind guided by instinct, a friend who refuses to leave your side even in the darkest hour. Ethan and Rex sat together, two lives forever intertwined by the crucible of survival, facing the future with trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond forged in the shadow of death. And somewhere in the quiet, the world learned to respect not just the heroes in our midst, but the unsung, unexpected ones who carry the weight of life on four steadfast legs. The story of Ethan Cole and Rex the German Shepherd had ended, yet it would live on forever, a testament to loyalty, bravery, and the extraordinary power of a heart willing to protect the ones it loves.